Good evening and welcome to today's edition of Global. We have with us today an outstanding lineup for our panel, including our very own Prime Minister, President George Bush of the United States, Secretary General of the United Nations, and Indonesia's Foreign Minister. Today we will be discussing terrorism in Southeast Asia. As we all know, terrorism has begun to spread once again in the year 2001 with a September 11th incident sparking off a worldwide terrorist hunt. Mr. Secretary General, can you tell us a little bit about how the global economic situation is faring since the attacks have begun?
Well, from our research, we can see that the global economy has suffered much in the recent year. It was a big shock when the World Trade Center in the USA was attacked. This attack struck fear into the heart of the citizens of the world. The biggest market to suffer was tourism. Around the world, countries such as Thailand and Indonesia, whose main revenue come from the tourism industry, suffered the most. We believe that it was this initial instability that leads to the desperation that took place in the world economy subsequently. As you can see, this causes an imbalance between the East and the West, and with the fluctuating currency issue, led an event further degradation for the economic situation.
And what do you think about the reality of the terrorist threat in Southeast Asia, Dr. Mahathir?
Well, from what we know, the threat is very real. The terrorist network that exists is much more extensive than we know. And due to geographical conditions, in certain areas in the southeast region, it is not difficult for the terrorists to hide from authorities and plan their attacks. Fortunately, with the cooperation between the ASEAN countries, we have been able to contain the problem from spreading to many of our countries. Unfortunately, however, terrorists have still been able to carry out their activities in a few countries, causing countless of deaths and numerous more injuries, as well as damage to local infrastructures and various other social impacts.
Well, with the splintering of the old political stabilities with respect to the emergence of newer, more radical groups, what is likely to happen if these terrorists are not stopped at the grassroots?
Nations such as India and massive political reforms have been occurring for the last few decades. Issues such as these are among the reasons why terrorists are able to pick holes and continue to exist. These new radicals feel that they can make a name for themselves by doing things that gain the attention of others. In some cases, they have other agendas. But the bottom line is that if we don't stop them, they will continue to spread throughout the region. This is definitely not something we want, and that is why the ASEAN nations have decided that we need to work together in eradicating this problem. At the same time, allowing the country in question to try and deal with the situation in whatever way they desire.
Another thing we've been hearing a lot lately is about the involvement of Islamic militant groups throughout the world in terrorist activities. What are your comments on that, Mr. Bush?
Well, with these militant groups that have to believe that it doesn't matter what they do. And in fact, the God and laws can on off of their activities. Many of these political groups are predisposed to the use of violence to get their point across. I think that the biggest problem is no really understand what they want. Many subgroups like Abu Sayyaf militants and also JI claims that they wish to form an intermediate Islamic state. But why do not see eye to eye is because we do not understand the Islamic state. What they intend to tell us by bombing civilian location. However, we should not classify the threat as wholly Islamic, as there are other groups that are involved. I do think that the Islamic militant also follow in the example of 19th century Musya. It is good release that what was committed was not revolution, but later political reform. In using the proper channel, reform are possible for a more unified people and a more peaceful country.
Okay then, moving on. Mr. Foreign Minister, how has the Indonesian government and people dealt with the latest bombing in Bali and Jakarta, also known as the famous Bali and JW Marriott bombings?
Suffice to say that the bombing have left a deep scar on the society. Both the people and the government are still suffering the effect. But it was a wake-up call that states that if we did not get up and go after the terrorists, we would definitely suffer, and that we should always head for the source.
Seeing that in the past, Indonesia has dealt with many attempted coups and various other problems, what do you think are the people's views on certain elements of change? How do the terrorists today compare to the terrorists of yesteryear?
Well, for one thing, our country is only now experiencing freedom of expression as well as many other liberties that we did not have for a very long time. The terrorists that you speak of from yesteryear were fighting for a cause, which was to free the people and rebuild the state. Not to mention about the suicide bombing, among other things, were unheard of. Terrorists today use various sorts of violence as well as fear tactics to attain their own personal goal. This is what I would call selfish, and we should stop before the death toll become catastrophic.
Can you give us a little explanation about the concept of Darul Islam, which many of the splinter cell terrorists seem to mention?
Basically, the concept of Darul Islam, which many of these terrorists claim to be their goal, is to form an independent Islamic state that encompasses the Malay archipelago, meaning Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines.
Thank you.